"We don't need old-school guys like you slowing things down," she said, and like firing me was just part of spring cleaning. "My name is Jack Moreno. I'm 61 years old, and I'd been the fleet mechanic supervisor at Moreno Freight Lines in southern Ohio for 32 years. Not the kind of guy who needed credit or gave speeches in meetings, just the guy who kept 83 trucks DOT compliant and rolling across 5 states. I didn't argue, didn't beg. Just nodded, tipped my hat, and walked out of Cassie's office. She was Frank's daughter, fresh out of business school in Chicago, full of ideas about predictive analytics and driverless logistics. I cleared my locker in silence while the younger techs avoided eye contact. Some of them had started here as high school interns. I trained every one of them. But not a single word as I packed 3 decades into one weathered craftsman toolbox. Frank Moreno, God rest his soul, started the company with 1 truck and a garage. Built it into a regional fleet hauling everything from groceries to steel beams. He hired me when I was 29, told me, "Jack, if the trucks don't move, the money don't either." Now Cassie thought diagnostics apps and AI sensors could replace experience. She never even looked at my file, never read the clause her father had personally added to my contract, the one that said if I was let go without cause, the company owed me 2 years' pay, plus 1 more year of health coverage. Frank didn't trust lawyers, but he trusted me. I tossed the last wrench into my box and wheeled it out to my truck. Didn't slam the door, didn't burn rubber, just called Derek Shaw, my buddy from the local union chapter, and Dave Becker, the lawyer Frank used when he set up that contract 18 years ago. I got home just before sunset, toolbox still rattling in the bed of my pickup. The house felt quiet, too quiet since my wife passed 5 winters ago. I made a pot of coffee, pulled out the file drawer, and laid my original contract on the table. Section 9B, just like I remembered, termination without documented cause equals 36 months total compensation and benefits. Dave, the lawyer, called back before the coffee even finished brewing. "It's airtight," he said. "Frank made sure of that. She owes you, Jack." Cassie thought I was some old grease monkey she could brush off with a handshake. She didn't know I was the licensed DOT compliance officer for the entire fleet. No me, no legal inspections, no trucks. And I'd just been let go, with 0 documentation, no warnings, no write-ups. I stared at that clause, remembered the day Frank added it. He'd said, "If something happens to me, I want you protected. You're the reason half these trucks still run." Frank wasn't just my boss. He was the closest thing I had to family. He gave me a job when my old shop went under, covered my medical bills when my son broke his leg and I didn't have insurance, treated me like a partner, not an employee. Now his daughter thought she could run a freight company from behind a laptop. And what really burned? She didn't even call me Jack, just said, "You, come in," shut the door. I wasn't mad, but she was about to learn what happens when you fire the man who kept the wheels turning, literally. The next morning, I dropped the paperwork off at Dave Becker's office. The contract, the clause, the termination memo. He read it twice, then looked up and said, "She's got no ground to stand on, Jack." We filed the severance claim that afternoon. 3 years' pay, full health coverage, and backdated benefits. Meanwhile, I started getting calls. The first was from Eddie, one of my old shop techs. "Boss, they've got some kid fresh out of trade school trying to recalibrate the brake sensors on a 97 Kenworth." Second call was from Manny, one of our night drivers. "They're canceling midnight inspections. Said AI systems can flag everything now." Cassie thought computers could replace intuition, replace decades of knowing what a truck sounds like when it's 2 days from throwing a belt. What she didn't know is none of the trucks could legally run without a DOT-certified inspector on staff. That inspector had been me for 14 years. She didn't bother to check who signed every compliance sheet, every emissions doc, every logbook audit. Within 48 hours, 23 trucks were grounded. And that was just the start. By Friday, the yard looked like a parking lot, trucks idle, drivers pacing, dispatchers scrambling to reroute jobs. Cassie called me that morning. Didn't say hi. Didn't ask questions. Just barked, "You didn't tell me you were the compliance officer." I sipped my coffee and said, "You didn't ask." She hung up. That afternoon, Dave called. "Jack, they're stalling on the payout, claiming restructuring voids the clause." I told him, "Then let's restructure their entire legal defense." He laughed. "Already filed." I spent the weekend at the old VFW, catching up with guys who'd left Moreno Freight over the last few years. Every single one had a story. How Cassie cut their overtime, canceled benefits, or replaced them with interns who knew the software. But those interns didn't know how to change a clutch plate on a 40-ton hauler. That's when the idea hit me. Not revenge. Rebuild. We didn't need Moreno Freight. We'd build something better, smaller, smarter, leaner, a shop run by the people who actually turn the wrenches. I called Eddie and Luis, two of the best guys I ever trained, told them to meet me Monday at the old transmission bay on 4th Street. We weren't just going to fix trucks anymore, we were going to build a fleet from the ground up, starting with the ones Cassie couldn't keep running. Monday morning, I walked into the old 4th Street garage, long shuttered but still solid. Eddie and Luis were already there, coffee in hand, grinning like kids on Christmas. We swept the floor, checked the lifts, flipped the main breaker. Lights flickered on for the first time in years. It wasn't pretty, but it had potential. Luis pulled out a whiteboard and wrote one word: legacy. We weren't building a repair shop. We were restoring pride. Meanwhile, Cassie was spiraling. Dispatch was behind. Half the fleet was still grounded. Clients were calling, angry. And the one person who knew how to fix the problem, she'd fired him. Dave sent me an email from their lawyer. They'd offer 6 months of severance if I signed an NDA and waived the clause. I forwarded it back with 2 words: try again. The next day, Jorge, our former diagnostics tech, walked into the shop. "I heard you were building something," he said, "and I'm tired of watching the place fall apart." I handed him a wrench. By the end of the week, we had 7 guys, all former Moreno, all loyal, all ready. And we weren't done yet. Cassie sent out a company-wide email. "Moreno Freight is entering a new era of automation. Adapt or move on." Problem was, the only thing adapting was the chaos. Engines were misdiagnosed, brake lines got missed, and a trailer dropped its load on I-75 because a temp forgot to lock the coupling. 3 clients pulled contracts in 48 hours. Meanwhile, over at our dusty little garage, we got a knock at the door. It was Calvin Hughes, logistics director from East Point Steel, one of Moreno's oldest clients. He looked around the room, recognized half the faces. "You guys the reason Cassie's trucks keep breaking down?" I smiled. "We're not the reason. We're the solution." He laid out their problem: fleet falling behind schedule, 2 trailers out of service, DOT audit incoming. We offered full diagnostics, emergency repairs, and DOT certification. Same day. Calvin nodded. "I'll run it up the chain." 2 days later, we had our first contract. Not a big one, but enough to keep the lights on. Cassie must have heard because she left a voicemail that night. "You're sabotaging this company, Jack. If you had any loyalty to my father, you'd shut that place down." I didn't respond, because loyalty goes both ways, and Frank never treated me like I was disposable. Cassie held a staff meeting that Monday, and mandatory. According to Manny, she stormed in blaming legacy culture for their breakdowns. Said people were clinging to the past instead of embracing the future. But the future was parked. 37 trucks, out of service, waiting on parts or proper inspections. Meanwhile, back at our shop, Calvin from East Point returned with a contract in hand. "Can you handle 10 trucks a week?" he asked. I looked around. Eddie nodded. Jorge cracked his knuckles. Luis grinned. "We can handle 15, I said. We signed the deal that night. Word spread fast. By Friday, 2 more companies reached out, both former Moreno clients, not because we were cheaper, because they trusted the people behind the tools. Dave forwarded a legal notice from Cassie's lawyer. Cease and desist, unfair competition, client poaching. I laughed out loud. We weren't poaching, we were rescuing companies from her chaos and rescuing the legacy Frank spent his life building. 1 bolt, 1 contract, 1 mile at a time. Cassie showed up in person this time. Black blazer, heels digging into the gravel outside our garage. She didn't ask to come in, just crossed her arms and said, "You're making a mistake, Jack." I wiped my hands on a rag, leaned against the doorframe. "Didn't think fixing trucks was illegal." "You're stealing clients." "No," I said. "You lost them." She stepped closer. "Keep this up and I'll make sure no one in the logistics industry touches you again." I chuckled. "Cassie, I taught half the guys running logistics in this region. They call me." She stared at me for a second, then turned and walked back to her company SUV. Didn't say goodbye. That same night, Dave called. "Jack, got a call from their board. Quiet one. They want a meeting." Turns out Cassie's modern vision had cost them 5 contracts in 2 weeks. Revenue was down, driver turnover was up, and a state inspection had just flagged 18 trucks for being out of compliance. The board was spooked. I said I'd consider a meeting, but only if it was off-site and only if Cassie wasn't in the room. Meanwhile, back at our garage, the whiteboard that used to say "Legacy" had a new word under it: leverage. We met in a neutral spot, corner booth at a diner off aisle 71. 3 board members, suits too stiff for the cracked vinyl seats. They opened with small talk. I didn't. "Let me guess," I said. "You're here because trucks are grounded, clients are gone, and your new direction is stuck in reverse." They didn't argue. One leaned forward. "We'd like to explore a return." I sipped my coffee. "I don't return. I rebuild." Another spoke. "Would you be open to absorbing Moreno's fleet division?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean merge?" "In principle," he said, "with your leadership over operations." I nodded slowly. "Cassie?" "She'll retain her shares, but no executive role." I looked at all 3 of them. "You want the fleet back up? You want drivers staying, clients returning? Then we do this my way, with my crew." They exchanged glances, then nodded. We agreed to draft terms. Merger in practice, but recovery in spirit. "And one more thing, don't tell her until it's signed," I said. "She'll find out soon enough." The announcement came during Moreno Freight's quarterly meeting, Cassie standing front and center trying to spin a 41% revenue drop as market turbulence. She was halfway through a slideshow when the board chairman tapped her shoulder. She turned, confused, and went pale when she saw me walking in. I didn't say a word, just handed the chairman a folder. He took the mic. "Effective immediately," he said. "Moreno Freight's fleet operations will merge under a new entity, Moreno Precision Transport, led by Jack Moreno." Cassie's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious," she snapped. "He's a mechanic." "No," the chairman said. "He's the reason this company lasted as long as it did." She looked at me. "You think you've won?" I finally spoke. This isn't about winning. It's about saving what your father built." She stormed out. I stood at the front of that room and saw familiar faces, techs, drivers, dispatchers, all leaning in for the first time in months. I said 4 words: "The fleet rolls again." And that's exactly what we did. We moved fast. Within 2 weeks, we'd rehired every mechanic Cassie let go, DOT certified, road tested, loyal. The new name, Moreno Precision Transport, went up over both garages. Clients returned without hesitation. East Point, Ridge Hall, Midland Steel, all back on board. We weren't the cheapest, but we were the most reliable. That's what mattered. Cassie? She vanished from Ohio. Word was, she took her buyout and went to Atlanta to start a logistics consulting firm. No calls, no goodbyes, just silence, which was fine by me. Meanwhile, I sat with Eddie and Jorge in the old break room. Same table, same scuffed floor, but something was different. This time, we weren't working for someone. We were building something steady, something that couldn't be coded into an app. Legacy rebuilt with calloused hands and hard-won trust. We expanded into the West Yard by month 3. Added 3 new lifts, a diagnostics bay, and a training corner for apprentices. Luis took charge of onboarding, said it felt good to teach the right way again. Eddie started mentoring 2 young techs, both fresh out of trade school. One of them asked him, "Who started this place?" He just pointed at me and said, "That's Jack. He kept this city moving before GPS even worked." I didn't say much, never needed to. But inside, it meant something. Frank's photo still hung above my new desk. Same frame, same smile. Every now and then I'd look at it and say, "Still rolling, old man." Sometimes I swore he smirked back. That fall, we passed our state audit with flying colors. 0 violations, 0 delays. Meanwhile, I heard Cassie's Atlanta firm folded. Didn't feel like revenge, just balance. The road has a way of showing who belongs on it. Phone rang late on a Tuesday, didn't recognize the number, nearly let it go to voicemail. But something told me to pick up. "Jack," the voice said. Raspy, familiar. It was Frank's brother, Raymond, former co-founder, long since retired to Arizona. "I've been hearing things," he said, "about the shop, about the merger, about you." I stayed quiet. He continued, "Cassie reached out. She's looking to come back." I nearly dropped the phone. "She wants to return?" I asked. "After walking out on all of it?" Raymond sighed. "She says she rushed it, got in over her head, wants to learn for real this time." I looked around the office, whiteboard full of deadlines, tools hanging in perfect order. "I'm not interested in dragging her back." Raymond's voice softened. "Not asking you to, just if she ever comes around, give her a job where she has to earn it, the way we all did." I didn't answer, because part of me still remembered that cold office, that cold dismissal, but another part remembered Frank. And that part whispered, maybe. She showed up without warning, no blazer, no makeup, just jeans, work boots, and a notebook. Didn't ask for a title, didn't bring a resume, just said, "If there's a job no one wants, I'll take it." I looked at her for a long time, then pointed to the far bay. "Start with tire rotations and fluid logs. You miss a line, it costs someone their brakes." She nodded. No attitude, no smirk. The crew watched, curious, skeptical, maybe even amused. Jorge leaned over and whispered, "Did hell freeze over, or did I just see Cassie mop the floor?" I shrugged. Long week. But she didn't flinch. She showed up early, left late, took notes. Never once pulled the "I'm the owner's daughter" card. One day I saw her staring at Frank's photo on the wall. She stood there a while, then grabbed a wrench and went back to work. I didn't say anything, because growth doesn't come from apologies. It comes from sweat. And she was sweating. 3 weeks in, she still hadn't touched a keyboard, but she could grease a fifth wheel and flag a failing brake pad faster than most new hires. She didn't complain, didn't cut corners, didn't expect praise. But the guys noticed. Luis handed her a sandwich one day without a word. Eddie showed her how to run a full chassis inspection. And one afternoon I caught her quietly correcting a torque spec on a repair sheet, one only Frank used to catch. That's when I knew. She wasn't here for the name, she was here for the work. We stood outside the bay one evening watching a newly cleared rig roll out. She turned to me and asked, "Do you think he'd be proud of this?" I didn't answer right away, just looked her in the eye and said, "He'd be proud you're finally earning it." She nodded, eyes glassy, jaw firm. That night I wrote her name on the crew board. No title, just Cassie Apprentice. And under it, one word in red, earned. The new East Wing opened in spring, 4 more bays, mobile lift, diagnostics room named after Frank. Cassie helped paint the trim herself, hands covered in primer, hair tied back. No camera crew, no ribbon cutting, just work. She still wasn't management, not officially, but she didn't need a title. She ran safety checks, trained interns, organized supply runs, and earned every nod she got. Jorge started calling her Cap as a joke. It stuck. Clients noticed too. Not just the trucks running better, but the crew. More focused, more united. Like they were building something that would outlive them. And maybe we were. One night I sat on the back steps of the shop watching the sunset hit the top of the fleet. Cassie sat beside me, quiet. "I'm not trying to fix the past," she said. "I know," I told her. "You're building the future, same way your dad did." She smiled. "Thanks for not slamming the door, Jack." I nodded. Doors only close if you lock them. 6 months to the day after I was fired, I stood in the same yard, but it wasn't Moreno Freight anymore. It was ours. Moreno Precision Transport. Eddie was training a fresh batch of techs. Luis had 3 bays humming. Jorge ran diagnostics with a swagger he hadn't had in years. Cassie? She walked the line with a clipboard and work boots, crew shirt tucked in, grease on her sleeves. Not above the work. Part of it. She caught my eye, gave a slight nod. I nodded back. Inside the shop, Frank's photo still hung on the wall, same spot, same frame. But now, next to it, a second one, the full crew taken last month, smiling like men who'd taken something broken and made it whole again. A customer came by that afternoon, said, "Funny how the place runs better now that the old man is gone." I smiled. "I didn't go anywhere," I said. "I just stopped asking for permission." And as the sun dipped low behind the last rolling trailer of the day, I realized this wasn't revenge, it was resurrection. Built not from spite, but from steel, sweat, and second chances. The kind that don't get handed to you. You earn them, just like we earned everything else.